Biblical Christianity Disproven, proof that the biblical Jesus sinned according to the Bible, and theological and textual evidence and argument as to the true origin of Christianity. One of the doctrinal claims of Christianity is that all human beings are sinners and have violated the law of God, and are thus worthy, according to their own merits, of some eternal consequence. The law which all humans are said to have violated, thus earning an eternal penalty, is the Torah, written Torah in rabbinic Jewish terms, which is the law given to Moses by God according to the first 5 books of the Bible. None of these laws has eternal torment as its listed penalty. Death is the Torah's ultimate penalty. If there was no expiation of sins by way of the sacrificial system, then what of those who paid the penalties designated, not to mention those killed by Israel and Judah in battle, with their having been ordered to do so by God according to the Bible, while those who have lived since the crucifixion are not held accountable by God, according to Christianity, so long as they appeal to the atoning death of Jesus. Another doctrinal claim of Christianity is that Jesus was conceived of a virgin by God or the Holy Spirit, and had always existed prior to his incarnation. Given that this claim would mean that Jesus was the genetic child of Mary and God, the question comes to mind which would not have occurred to a first-century Roman: how did God come to have human genetic material which was apparently definitively his, and was capable of producing the child when combined with the genetic material of a human being? Also, given that, according to the accounts from the Gospels, it was Jesus' bodily form which was brought about by the incarnation, the divine aspect of Jesus was in his body, which means that his divine aspect ceased to exist when he died on the cross. Another discrepancy is the fact that Jesus quotes from different source documents which comprise the Pentateuch as though they were one, a mistake which would be perfectly understandable for a first-century human adherent to the Yehudi religion, but not God incarnate. Matthew chapter 19, verses 4 and 5. And he answered and said unto them, Have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, said by most to be from the priestly source document, and said, For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, part of a different source document. As for evidence of the fact that a variety of sources comprise the text of the Pentateuch, consider the following: Genesis 28 beginning with verse 13, And, behold, Yahweh stood above it, and said, I am Yahweh God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. And Jacob awaked out of his sleep, and he said, Surely Yahweh is in this place, and I knew it not. Exodus 6, beginning with verse 2, And God spoke unto Moses, and said unto him, I am Yahweh, and I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, by the name of God Almighty, but by my name Yahweh was I not known to them. Deceitful, manipulative claims from Christian ministers as to how this is somehow not a contradiction aside, I am sure it is obvious to all that the former quoted verse completely contradicts the latter. In addition, there is the fact that following this verse, the entire remainder of the Pentateuch contains far greater use of the tetragrammaton Yahweh in contexts where some form of Elohim would have been used previously. The reason, according to most scholars, is that the Elohist for the priestly source truly began as a separate source document, and the aforementioned verses actually did introduce the use of the name Yahweh within that source document. Also, there are 2 sets of 10 commandments of which I am aware within the book of Exodus. I do not mean by this that there are 2 sets of tablets containing the same commandments, mind you, but 2 entirely different sets, both the well-known commonly referenced Decalogue chapter 20, verses 1 through 17, which is not called the 10 Commandments in the text, and another set that is specifically referred to as the 10 Commandments. Chapter 34, verses 10 through 28. Another doctrinal claim of Christianity is that Jesus was resurrected, having claimed that he would rise from the dead after 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. It is also claimed that Jesus never lied nor sinned in any way. Specifically, Jesus states in the book of Matthew, chapter 12, verses 39 and 40, that there shall be no sign given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. There are a few problems with this. For one, the above is untrue according to the account later in the book of Matthew of the sequence of events beginning with the Last Supper, and ending with the resurrection. Matthew 26:19 states that the Passover was eaten by Jesus and his disciples the night before his crucifixion. This means that when the Gospels refer to the following day as the preparation day, with Mark 15:42 stating specifically that preparation day is the day before the Sabbath, they cannot be referring to the day of preparation for the high Passover Sabbath unless the sinless Jesus willingly violated the law of God as to when the Passover is to be eaten. If it is admitted that Matthew states that Jesus and his disciples did, in fact, eat the Passover on the date designated by the law of God, then, due to the fact that the next day, the day on which Jesus was crucified, was the preparation day for the weekly Sabbath which began that evening, along with Matthew and, in fact, all 4 Gospels concurring in stating that Jesus was risen on the first day of the week, it is inescapable that the book of Matthew is saying that Jesus could not have been dead and buried for 3 days and 3 nights, but, instead, approximately a day and a half. Regardless of which is admitted, if not both, the fact is clear that according to the Bible, the biblical Jesus either lied or violated the literal commands regarding the Passover. It is only by combining the account of the book of John which not only contradicts the 3 synoptic Gospels in that it places the Passover consumption day on the evening after Jesus' burial, but also in that it excludes the institution of the Lord's Supper/Communion/Eucharist with the accounts from the synoptic Gospels that a story has been, largely successfully, woven from the inclusion of certain details from each Gospel, and the simultaneous exclusion of that information from the very same Gospels which contradicts the desired conclusion. Speaking of the Gospel according to John, I will, shortly, use quotes therefrom and from the book of Zechariah to explain what was meant by the Word of God. First, however, I want to mention what I consider a conspicuous occurrence relating to the Gospel of John. Specifically, a saying of one named John having been mentioned by Theophilus, Bishop of Antioch during the 2nd century in his apology Apologia Diatolisus on the Christian religion. Now, as incredible as it might seem, Theophilus, being bishop of the Christian Church of Antioch, does not evince any knowledge of there ever having been a Jesus Christ in this entire 3-book apology. He does mention and expound on the Word of God, on atonement, on the reason why the Christians are called Christians. He states that it is due to their being anointed with the oil of God but never Jesus Christ. The closest he ever comes to doing so is his attribution to what he calls the gospel of a few quotes which the canonical Gospels place into the mouth of Jesus. Aside from the influence of these few quotes, his Christian theology is based essentially if not absolutely completely upon the Tanakh Old Testament in Christian terminology. What ties the book of John into this, is that, as mentioned above, one of Theophilus's quotes is attributed to a Christian named John, who was responsible for a saying which came to be incorporated into the gospel to which Theophilus refers. The quote would be recognized by anyone who has read literally even the first couple of verses of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things came into existence through him, and apart from him, not one thing came into existence. I will leave it to the reader to decide whether it is coincidental or otherwise that the very quote which Theophilus, who evinces no knowledge of Jesus Christ, attributes to John has come down to us as the opening of the Gospel according to John.